space is a place for us.
Real people with real issues.
Discussing real topics.
Black space.
A safe space for our community.
The first question is, when we started the conversation before things really got hot and we got deep into the woods, Ivo and Daniel, you guys were making two great points from a different perspective. And so I asked this question of the group: what role, because we're certainly the question of the day that we're discussing is the role of the Black church and the Black community. What role do people want the Black church to have? And I asked that question is you want the church to have a moral role in the community or economic one? And I asked that question because when we see Black churches thrive, for every example of a church that's not, that's quote unquote failing the Black community, I can give you an example of a Black church and economically is doing very well in a Black community. You get wealthy pastors, you then in turn get wealthy members. It exists. Those things exist. And those churches
it's not a one-to-one.
Wait. On the flip side, when the churches take a moral position, they are also criticized for standing on their morals. We see this in the example in Detroit, where the Winans, when he refused to bless the baby in front of the church because the mother was unwed, because that's how the church did it. He still blessed the baby, but he did it in private, as to not. And so it's like a lose-lose with the Black church. Dan, you're chomping at the bit.
So part of what you said, the part that I just wanted to make a clarity on is, I never said that there are no churches doing good work. What I am saying is that if I were to drive through right now, tonight is a Thursday night, if I were to have driven through a Black neighborhood this evening that has 4 or 5 churches down one street, 3 or 4 of them are going to be closed right now. So what is the role of the Black church that I would like to see the Black church be a part of? I would like to see them involved in community building, right? Earlier today, I went to an event that was after school provider program practitioners. So people that provide after school programs to keep kids engaged in different things. And one of the statistics jumped out to me. It said 2 to 6 o'clock in the afternoon is the highest rate for juvenile crime and delinquency, right? So that's when kids bored, get into a lot of trouble. And I remembered I'd actually proposed a program for a church that would provide tutoring and some kind of a mentoring for kids in the church. And the question and the pushback I got was, what if they come and they break stuff? And so it's that mentality. And this is not a one-off situation. This happened multiple times. So I just left the church and started working with community organizations. So to Ivo's point, the issue is not that they're not Black men doing great work in the community. It's that they've decided to stop fighting against an institution that is very hesitant to change and adapt, and they're doing the work with community-based organizations. I've worked with
That's not a reflection of the Black church at large at all, though.
Pardon me?
That's not a reflection of the Black church at large at all.
That is a reflection of the Black church at large, because if it were not,
for example,
sure,
because we can really divvy this up into 2 groups: poor Black churches and the wealthy ones.
Let's do it.
Because there's not a whole lot of in between, and I've been members of both. The church that I was a member of in Detroit before I moved to Grand Rapids, my last church membership was Greater Grace Temple of the Apostolic Faith. You may be familiar with Bishop Ellis. That church is the largest church in the city of Detroit, so Rosa Parks' funeral and Aretha Franklin's funerals were both there. Greater Grace was my church home. Bishop Ellis married me. That's one of those, and it's a smaller mega church, but it does qualify as a mega church. And Bishop Ellis catches all the hell because people assume what he does and does not do, how much money he takes, how he's not pastoring the people, and the experience is actually totally different. They give a lot back to the community financially. They build a lot. They have a credit union, a funeral home. Like they're building their side of Detroit, and they have been longer than I've been alive. So that's one example of a very wealthy church that's doing a lot. But if you ask the people of Detroit, well, what is Greater Grace doing? If you're not affiliated with Greater Grace Temple or you don't know anything about it, the knee-jerk reaction is, they ain't doing enough. Bishop Ellis, he's just on TV, living good, without knowing how much money they're actually pumping back into Detroit. Now, on the flip side, poorer churches, like the one I just served at for 13 years, want all these kinds of programs, but these churches are reflections of the communities that they're in. We didn't have no money. And so if the community does not support the church, how can the church support the community? Because most churches are funded by the people. My goal personally in ministry is to get to such a point where I can fund churches completely out of my own pocket so that people don't have to be worried about things like that. I'm not one who, I don't believe that tithes are a New Testament command. So if people are really expected to give out of the spirit of liberty in what they have, then churches need funding beyond what the communities can provide, because the communities can't always provide, or the membership rather. But if the community would support the church could support the community more when you're talking about these smaller churches. Now, what you're talking about, I think I know that group in the middle that's kind of bougie, not totally wealthy, not totally poor, and not wanting to break anything. But I think they're the minority of Black churches.
Well, let me,
Roger, go ahead.
I live in Detroit. I live very close to Greater Grace Temple. Very, like, within 5-minute drive. Mm-hmm. And I'm not overly impressed by Greater Grace Temple. I've known about the church for many years. I'm not sure if Daniel was online when on the coldest day in winter when I went to all the mega churches in Detroit. It was the coldest day. It was -10 degrees. I stopped by Triumph Church. I stopped by New Ebenezer. I stopped by Greater Grace. I stopped by all these churches. Every single one of them were closed. There was no warming centers. There was cold and it was dark. And these buildings had heat coming out of the chimney. So for me, I'm about the people. All that fluffy stuff, and no, if you're not providing for the needs of the people who are most hurt by, who are most vulnerable, then to me you are irrelevant to me as an institution of the people. I mean, in when it comes to being a spiritual bastion. Because I know we talk about, I mean, I'm not religious, but I've studied Jesus. I just don't think Jesus will have a church clothes on -10 degree day. I don't see that happening. That just don't sound like something. I mean, it's not really
baby out with the bathwater and then accuse them of not doing anything is also not.
Let me finish what I'm saying. And so when I see those type of things, and I've seen it numerous times, I think one of the things that I've repeated before, and I think people who are in church are very hesitant to do, and I think that's one of the biggest weaknesses of our people in particular, is we don't, okay, you can mention the good things. There are some great, I mentioned when I first came on, before you came on, I mentioned the good things in the church. However, the issue with people in church, they aren't able to be very honest about where the church is failing. That is a flaw. It's almost like a relationship with somebody. You're married to this person, they got issues, but you want to ignore their issues because they look good on the outside. No.
That's not entirely true. Even though I partially agree.
That is not how we work. That is not how we.
Black people have a welfare mentality when it comes to.
Listen. Listen. So, in order for true progress to be made, from a very, very logical, real standpoint, we have to acknowledge the flaws of the church in order for it to grow. And that's what starts from.
The function of the church before we can acknowledge the flaws. Because everybody agree on what the church should be doing, so how can we agree on what they're not doing?
Well, you can. I mean, it's been around for too long to not know what it should be doing.
That's not true. You can't dictate as an outsider what a religious institution should be doing. That's not a true statement.
That's the community.
What a religious institution should be doing when you don't practice the religion.
That's what I'm saying. I work in a school, and because you don't go, just because your child is attending school or you don't have a work there, that you can't say anything about the institution of education.
Apples, honey. not apples
Right,
to apples.
that's apples to apples.
Apples to apples. I come out the church, and I was everything that Karanji's talking about are things that I proposed while I was still a member. So I don't want to just bring criticisms. What are some of the things that we could do as the church could do as an organization? They're very simple, small
But what
things.
is the church supposed to do? I think we have to establish that first, so then we can
That's-
criticize what they're not doing. Because I'm for the criticism.
Let me
If we
answer that.
establish what their role actually is, then we can
Let me
criticize.
answer that from the Bible. Sermon on the Mount, before Jesus ministered to the people, Jesus fed the people. The role of the church is to meet the people at their needs. So if the people are hungry, if the people are cold, if the people are without clothes.
Where Peter said, "Silver and gold have I none," because I've been in churches where silver and gold they didn't have.
But isn't the church is the church not the one speaking that if you believe and have faith, then he shall provide the cattle on 1,000 hills?
The richer churches were supposed to support the poorer churches because some churches are going to be poor. The Bible said that too.
I just want
I don't listen.
We're moving.
I don't want to listen.
We're moving.
Pause for a second. I don't want to get too deep. Listen, we're having a.
The role of the church is to provide for the needs of the community.
And the church as well, because some churches have more money than other churches, and all churches cannot provide for physical needs like that, and that's in the Bible too.
Forgetting that the church is not the building. We keep thinking
the
church has never been the building.
We need a Bible study.
But listen, you guys, we're gonna
go to the Bible, but it won't actually support the points that you are making. Those are traditional arguments.
Time out.
I'll send you the references. DM me.
Listen, I don't want to listen, Daniel, Ivo, listen. We're getting. I appreciate it, but we're kind of going back and forth in the statement I made earlier. First of all, we need to define what the role is what the role even is of the Black church.
Provide for the needs of the people.
A couple of issues that I have, and a couple of issues I have with a lot of people in their criticism of the Black church is that there's two different viewpoints. One is the viewpoint of the people that aren't even church members or believers trying to tell a religious institution or a faith-based institution what they should believe and how they should believe it. That's number one. Number two, a lot of people that have left the church, listen, you left your church because your church was not providing what it needed for you. You didn't find another church that was meeting that need. And that's another issue that we have. And then, like a scorned divorcee, marriage is bad. So all churches are now bad. And I hate that. I hate that. Ivo brings up a good point. Wait a minute, Daniel. Ivo brings up a good point. You could draw churches. You need money to do things.
True.
And all the scripture that you bring up about God providing, the word also says, faith without works, without work. I alluded to in the beginning of the conversation that the Black church is a microcosm of the community.
Black Space, a safe space for our community.